Good day and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Shritika, the host for this afternoon. For your kind information, Malaysian Food and Beverage Trade Fair provides an opportunity to F&B business traders to revitalize the business through an exclusive B2B platform with power-packed F&B services and solution providers. We have been hosting webinar and symposium series that are related to food and beverage industry to provide a better understanding about the growing sectors and opportunities. If you are a food manufacturer or trader, then MIFB is the best place to be. Today, we are presenting a series on the rise of plant-based alternative proteins, which will be presented by Mr. Hiroto Yamazaki, the founder and CEO of Plant-Based Japan, and Ms. Justine Cruz, MBA holder of Sustainable Business Practices from University of Oregon. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel. I will bring them at the end of the presentation, as we will also have time for the Q&A at the end. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our first speaker, Mr. Hiroto Yamazaki. Let's welcome him.
Hello.
Hi,
can you hear? Yeah.
Yes,
hello. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. All right. So thank you so much for everyone for having me today. My name is Hiroto Yamazaki, and I'm CEO of founder of Plant-Based Japan. So let me share my screen. Yes. So as my company name, so we are very focusing on plant-based industry, especially in Japan. So today we would like to talk about a possibility of Japanese plant-based market. As you may know, Japan is a little bit behind in plant-based industry compared to other countries like Singapore and Hong Kong. But recently and suddenly, the plant-based movement happened here in Japan as well, especially since 2020, after COVID happened. So as you can see, the burger chains like Moss Burger and global chain Burger King has started to provide vegan options. And also the ramen store such as Ippudo had plant-based menu for a while in Japan. So it is surely happening, the plant-based movement here in Japan as well. So today, we would like to, I'd like to share with you my thoughts about the possibility of Japanese plant-based market with both import and export perspective. And before moving on to the main topics, let me quickly introduce about myself a little bit. My name is Hiroto, and founder and CEO of Plant-Based Japan. So personally, I'm also doing a YouTuber, vegetarian influencers in Taiwan. So luckily, I was selected as one of the top vegetarian influencers in Taiwan last year. And also I got an opportunity to publish vegetarian vegan guidebooks, which is Japanese topic in 5 regions, including Southeast Asia. And our mission is very simple. So we would like to unite food lovers at one table. So we feel there are a little bit barriers between vegetarian and non-vegetarian. So when I did a tour guide in Tokyo during the schoolhood, I saw many people, especially vegans, eat different food or even at the different restaurant with people who are not vegan. So there's no doubt that the plant-based movement is coming, but plant-based is not even for the vegans, but also everyone. But we see there still kind of barriers between those people. So our mission, like I said, is to break the barriers and to unite food lovers at one table. with delicious food choices. Then last few years, we started our company called Plant-Based Japan. So as you can see, we are developing the media marketing consulting service with the theme of connecting Japan and the world through plant-based food. And also we are preparing for our new business, which is private brand by the end of this year. So I'd like to a little bit advertise about it at the end of this presentation. Yes, so our goal is as written. So I'd like you to understand the potential of Japanese plant-based market and connect to your business opportunities. All right, so here's the topics. So mainly I'm gonna focusing on the overview of Japanese market, but I'd like to start, first boom to the fourth boom, future kind of possibility in Japan. And yes, I'd like to start with the macrobiotic first boom. Yeah, so before going to the first topic, so I'd like to add one thing. So mainly I'm going to focusing on third boom, which is current status under COVID-19 situation. So I'm going to quickly, explain the first boom and the second boom. Yes. All right. So let me share with you what happened in Japan early 20s. So there was a boom here in Japan, which is called macrobiotic, which is a kind of lifestyle stressing balance and harmony. So this diet actually developed in Japan and spread all over the world, especially in the US early 2000s. So like I wrote, so eat locally grown seasonal foods and keep the balance in and yang elements of food. So this is not actually equal to the plant-based, so some of them also eat fish and sometimes eat, dairy. But basically people who follow the macrobiotic do not eat animal products compared to ordinary people. So I believe this was a kind of first boom of plant-based in Japan. So macrobiotic itself is a concept that was created around the 1930s, but after 2000. So as you can see, so celebrity Madonna, for example, started to do macrobiotic diets, and this surely caused the boom here in Japan as well. So because of because of that, Japanese people generally associate plant-based itself with the health perspective rather than other reasons such as environmental friendly and animal welfare. And this slide shows more details. So this is a survey for 400 people who are older than 16 years old in Japan. And those 400 people are vegan, vegetarian, or flexitarian. So, people who already started to do kind of plant-based lifestyle. And this is the answer of the reason why they go vegan or flexitarian. And the left side is the answer of the vegan, and the right side is the answer of the flexitarian. But both of them, the top common answer is because of health, as you can see. So let me repeat again. So Japanese people would, basically connect plant-based with the health aspect rather than other, the sustainable reason so far. Okay. So let's talk about the second topic, which is Tokyo Olympic Game. All right. So this graph shows the number of tourists to Japan. As you can see, after Fukushima earthquake happened, which is 2019, the number of tourists who come to Japan increased rapidly, as you can see. And I think if the corona didn't happen, we would probably have achieved the goal of 40 million people in 2020. But as you may know, unfortunately, because of COVID happened, it didn't reach the number. But 5% of the tourists who came to Japan are said to be vegetarian and or vegan. So the market size also estimated to be around 2 million people and $400 million in the vegetarian market here in Japan. And as the number of the overseas traveler is increasing, so more companies and more local governments started to provide vegan options. For example, Okinawa Tourism Association. So they held vegan seminars for local restaurants and hotels, and actually published a vegan map after the vegan menu was available. So this was actually the good opportunity for Japan, because of the foreign people who come to Japan cannot eat the vegetarian vegan food. So that's why Japanese local area, like I said, Okinawa and other area, started to hey, let's increase the number of the restaurant, and then held a seminar and also published a guidebook. So this was a good opportunity for Japan. And this is not only in Okinawa, but all other regions from Hokkaido to Kyushu area, southern area in Japan, happen similar kind of program because of the Olympic game. And it definitely worked, and the number of the vegan, vegetarian-friendly cities had increased all over Japan. Okay, so this was the topic about the second topic. And now let's move on to the third topic, which is COVID-19. So after COVID happened, no need to say, the tourism industry has been affected. So this is a photo that I took in Asakusa, so one of the famous sightseeing spots in Tokyo. And there were a lot of people there. But during the COVID, as you can see, there were no people. So we thought that, plant-based movement has stopped in Japan. However, surprisingly, and also ironically, the plant-based movement had been accelerated even before Corona. For example, you can see the burger chain store, such as Moss Burger and Freshness Burger, and as well as the coffee chain store, and even the main mega chain of convenience store, for example, 7-Eleven, Lawson, Family Mart. From the 2020, they started to serve vegan menu, vegan products at the same time. This was really surprising for us, but this happened here in Japan. And this is not only food service, but also retail and manufacturing company as well. As you can see, the domestic major company, probably some of you know, the Ito Ham, Nippon Ham, and also Otsuka Foods. They also started to provide vegan options, vegan meat alternative, and also startup company such as Next Meats. So this company got listed in the stock market in the US last year. So this company also started, last year, and rapidly they grow their business right now. And also overseas companies such as IKEA Japan, Omni Meat from Hong Kong. So they also start to enter the plant-based market in Japan. Yes, and I heard that it's going well the business here in Japan. Okay, but so why is so, becoming plant-based market here in Japan? So this is really similar to other countries, I guess, because of the the awareness of health, consciousness, and also sustainability reason. For instance, because of Corona, the sales of the vegetable juice have surely increased before Corona. People, because of the state of emergency, started to think of their health and, okay, let's go to buy the vegetable juice and the vegetable food, and even go to the vegan restaurant, ordinary people. And it seems that there's kind of tendency similar to overseas. And yeah, this is the article that I found in overseas. But similar things happen here in Japan as well. However, to be honest, many of Japanese companies are still in the test marketing stage, unfortunately. But luckily for the company from overseas, there's some reason, but I guess the most seen cases are, companies have been failing in the marketing. For example, pushing vegan option, vegan, mark, vegan word too much upfront. So let me share with you some example. As you can see, so this is written, in the center, vegan role in Japanese, but too much to push the vegan word. And so this is the another sample, the vegan curry. Yes, this is also big for, ordinary people. And even setting up a shelf for vegans. This might cause a opportunity loss in Japan, unfortunately. And I guess similar things happen in other countries as well, because especially here in Japan, because vegan, not so many at the moment. So when they see vegan, this word, too much, so they might think, oh, it's only for vegan, not for us. So in result, only vegan, for very, very few people, buy the products. So like I mentioned earlier, so this type of marketing causing opportunity loss, unfortunately here in Japan. Yes, so similar cases happen even in the Family Mart. You can see, vegan mark too much, too big. And, only like a few weeks showed up and suddenly they finished to sell it. Yes, so this is an article published last few years. So this was really shocking and good meaning for me. So there's no meat and eggs and dairy, but don't call them vegan. Yes, so because if people hear the word of vegan, so some of them feel unappetizing or polarizing associations. So this was an article that published in 2019, but after 3 years passed, now similar things happen in Japan. So like I said previously, Japan is a little bit behind in terms of the plant-based industry. But on the other hand, if the foreign company come to Japan because, they have already successful cases, so maybe can make good impact for the Japanese industry. Yeah, makes use of their experiences, I think. All right. Okay, please. And yeah, so this is the data that I made from a lot of articles. So what I want to mention here is the flexitarian is a massive market here in Japan as well. So no need to say details. Maybe same things happen in other countries, but vegan, vegetarian are very few. So I wrote 5.7%, but I feel it's less than that. Not so many, unfortunately. But people who are caring about their health in terms of the health, flexitarian are becoming more and more here in Japan. So this is the target of our business. Okay. So yeah, this is the example case from the Beyond Meat. As you may know, like 95% of the consumer who bought their products also eat meat. So the biggest market is, like I said, flexitarian, non-vegan, non-vegetarian here in Japan. Yes, so some of you have heard of this corporate name, Green Monday, started from Hong Kong. So this organization has also launched in Japan last year. The Green Monday is a social venture started from Hong Kong and promoting plant-based action at least 1 day per week. So that's why they call it Green Monday. And for example, working with a government and even corporates to educate why people need to go plant-based with the theme of both a environment and health reason. And not only educating, but also providing solutions like operating plant-based retail and restaurant chain store called Green Common in Hong Kong, mainland China, and Singapore as well. Yes, so this is not about Japan, unfortunately, but this is the data from Hong Kong, Green Monday. So I heard that the flexitarian population was only 5% in 28, but this year, so the data became 40% flexitarian population in Hong Kong. So I guess a similar thing has just started to happen here in Japan. So even though this is very early, but at the same time, we could say there are a lot of room and potentials in Japan. Okay, so one example as successful case. All right, so one of the famous major food manufacturer company called Gurico. So they have a product called Puchin pudding. So they did not mention vegan at all in their package. Instead of that, they say made from plants, and also add one sentence, like lightly sweetened. So this is really interesting for us because, like I said previously, a lot of products say vegan on their package too much. After they start to sell, and a few weeks later, suddenly they stop to sell because it's really difficult to sell for the ordinary people if we too much push the vegan word. But this is really successful case, over 2 years, so they're still selling the products. And Family Mart, but this is really no pop in Family Mart because so many types of people come here, so they do not mention like vegan, vegetarian at all. But in case of Aeon, so Aeon is one of the maybe no need to say, maybe there is in Malaysia as well, but Aeon is the main target is family here in Japan. So there are a lot of families who have the children with allergy. And unfortunately, I heard that here in Japan, so 10% of children are having allergy. And also half of them have allergy of egg and dairy. So that's why they push the allergy mark rather than vegan mark. And then I saw many people buy the products at Aeon. Okay, so this is the final example. Puchimpli. So National Azabu is a international, how can I say? National Azabu is located in the place where the foreign, residents are living a lot. So there are a lot of vegan actually there. So that's why I think they push the vegan pudding, up front. And fortunately, the sales is very good. So what I wanted to emphasize here is to make the package versatile for stores to promote is very important. It's a very key factor, especially in Japan. For example, in the case of Family Mart, I guess the consumers who want to eat sweets, but I feel about the curry, feel like, cut the calorie by the products. And as for the Aeon, so the parents who have children with allergy, they buy the products. And the last case is National Azabu, international people living in Japan who are vegan buy the products. It's a completely different consumer layers. But the food package is really important here in Japan. If we say the vegan too much, it's very difficult for major retail store to promote the products. For example, Family Mart in the Aeon, like I said. Okay, so this is the summary of the third topic. The first one is the plant-based demands are increasing due to the growing health awareness and sustainability, but not as much for general consumers. And the second one is that therefore marketing strategy is very important. Strategy that does not make general consumers feel unfamiliar is crucial point. Although overseas companies are also expanding into Japan. Like I said, Omnipork and recently the Violife from EU, the vegan cheese brand also penetrate into the Japan market, and the reaction is quite good. But there are not many Southeast Asian companies yet. So that means, there are a lot of possibilities for SEA company as well. Yes, so this is the end of the third boom, and let's move on to the final session. Fourth boom, which is about made in Japan, made from Japan. Okay, so this is a photo that I took at the Veggie World held in Beijing in 2019. I saw many brands from US and EU, for example, Just Egg and Beyond Meat, and also Omnipork from Hong Kong. But there were not Japanese exhibitors at the time. And maybe for you, it's a little bit difficult to think of Japanese alternative protein food brand. Maybe before this presentation, you had no idea. Yeah, that's true, because there were no Japanese exhibitors at the time. Yes, however, we see the Japanese food has significant potential for the plant-based food market based on the history. Because in the past, meat consumption was considered actually taboo. So people did not eat meat for a long time, for more than 1,200 years in Japan before. So naturally, plant-based food culture, food ingredients has been passed down to the present day. Even Japanese forgot about that, but naturally has been passed down to the present day. So like tofu and konnyaku, a maker started to penetrate to plant-based market recently. And I feel there are a lot of potentials this aspect. And not only me, other well-known chefs also pay attention to Japanese food culture with the plant-based food scene. I think some of you have read news about 11 Madison Park, New York. So this is really famous, 3 Michelin starred French restaurant for 9 consecutive years. So after they renewed or opened in New York this year, so they changed their menu completely to plant-based. And currently a lot of people are waiting, you know, because it's really popular right now. But this chef, so Daniel-san, also focusing on the Japanese food ingredient, in, you know, even for the French dish, and also making use of the umami dashi type of, you know, food tech, started from Japan. And as for the Japanese chef, so some of you have heard of this name, Saido, which is located in Tokyo. So this restaurant is #1 vegan restaurant designated by Happy Cow, vegan searching application. And he, the chef, also mentioned that he's using the Japanese traditional food tech, like fermentation, umami, dashi, type of, you know, Japanese traditional food tech into his dishes. So these completely different chefs are talking about same thing. So this is really interesting for me. And I quoted one of the messages from the 11 Madison Park. So as you can see, so while they're preparing their, you know, renewal or open, so they invited 2 Shoujin chefs, spent 3 months at their restaurant. And then they learn from them, you know, that which they back to the 7th century monasteries in Kyoto. This was really interesting. Maybe if you are interested in the story, maybe you can Google 11 Madison Park, Shoujin, then maybe you can find more details. And yes, so this is the last part of me. So a little bit advertise on our own, excuse me. Yes, so actually, as I mentioned previously, so Plant-Based Japan is also planning to launch our products. And this is the Japanese-inspired plant-based food brand by the end of this year. And which is the concept of umami and unique ingredients in Japan. So I hope that I could find any potential partners to work with, you know, after this presentation as well. Yes. All right, so maybe my presentation finished a little bit earlier, but this is the end of my presentation. Yes, I talk about the Japanese market from the early 2000s to the COVID-19 and the future development. Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for your attention.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Hiroto, for your splendid presentation today. And
Yes.
I guess the audiences have been giving their questions in their Q&A box. Anyways, we will be going through the questions at the end of this session. Meanwhile, all the audience, if you have any questions, you can put them under the Q&A box. Please mention Mr. Hiroto's names as well. And next, we will be moving forward with Ms. Justine Cruz's presentation. Ms. Justine? Hi, yes.
Hi there. Thank you so much, Hiroto. It was great to hear from you, and welcome everyone. My name is Justine, and I am going to share my screen, and I will get started here shortly. Okay, I think the screen is set. So, like I said, my name is Justine, and I am working on my MBA in Sustainable Business Practices at the University of Oregon, where I am also doing a specialization in sustainable business and food studies. And for those of you who may not know, Oregon is in the Pacific Northwest, and that's in the United States. But the reason why I started to become interested in the plant-based market was because 6 years ago, I was told by the doctor that I had very high cholesterol and heart attacks. In case you don't know, heart attack is the #1 killer in the United States. So it's one thing that a lot of Americans are being diagnosed with, is having high cholesterol, which also leads to diabetes and can lead to various other cancers. So I decided to try to switch my diet, and plant-based worked, and it reversed everything. So I know some people had questions about flexitarian, and maybe I can share on my own time. I do choose, if I'm in another country, to try some fish. So I think flexitarian basically means that you make the exception on special occasions to have some animal-based product, and it depends on each person. But for the most part, I'm primarily vegan now, and I am thankful to the plant-based market because it gives me a lot more variety and some good tasting food rather than just having only vegetables. So let me get started here. To kick off though, today I do want to just let us all think about a quote that I found very interesting from one of the studies that I came across from Emily Cassidy. And the quote is, "If the world's crops were grown for direct human consumption instead of livestock production, that could feed an additional 4 billion people." And with global population growing, and we're planning to be at an additional 2.2 billion people by 2050, as food suppliers, providers, manufacturers, and even consumers, we all have to start thinking about, well, where is this food going to come from? And how are we going to get that onto our plates? And one concept that we've been talking about a lot in my business school, especially in the sustainability space, is the triple bottom line. And the triple bottom line basically means that as a business, we have a duty to balance these three forces of people, profit, and the planet. And when we are able to do those in a very harmonious way, we can achieve equitable environments as well as sustainable worlds, and ones that work with us and our business rather than against us. And so the idea is that if a firm looks solely at profits and ignores people and the planet, it cannot become profitable in the long term, because there are other costs that come with not accounting for these. And so now I want to look at the global greenhouse gas emissions by sector. And this presentation will take a little more of the environmental look, just because that is my specialty in my studies. But I also, again, have that business background, so I can speak to both. But my project last year, I looked at the greenhouse gases from different protein types. And I think it's great to understand, before we even go into talking about the environment and talking about our carbon footprint, to understand as a sector that the agriculture, forest, and land use, as globally, we are taking up 24 or contributing to 24% of emissions. So sure, it's not the whole thing, and there are other sectors that are responsible, but it's important to know where we stand so that we know how to move forward. And I always like to ask, why should we all care? I'm sure everyone sees it on the news, how the temperature is rising and all of the natural disasters that are happening. But we should care because our businesses will not be around if we continue to do business as usual without actually looking at what's impacting our business in our respective environment. So in California, for example, where my family lives, we have fires that go on every summer, and it pollutes the air, it destroys lots of homes and lots of lands. Farmers are also being faced with drought, and also the soils are just drying up. A little bit of information if you're curious, but it takes over 1,000 years to have the soil build 1 inch of nutritious soil for life, but it's taking about less than 20 years to deplete that soil. And so the amount at which we're able to regenerate is not fast enough than the amount that we are eroding our soils. And as we know, in the north, there are melting ice caps in the Arctic. And as we speak, just right now, for every second that goes by, 14,000 tons of water per second are melted. And that has many negative impacts. One of them is flooding. And in the last photo, that's when I took a trip to Ghana in Africa. And I was helping teach out there. And this student is impacted by some of the flooding because she lives on a small island, and if the water rises on certain days, she's not able to make it to school. So outside of the physical, there's a lot of social and justice issues that are taking place. And one thing I want to call out is the idea of broken supply chains. So there are many reasons why supply chains fail, whether you're dealing with long lead times, a shortage of supplies, not being able to forecast your demand, for example, or an external issue altogether that disrupted your supply chain, such as COVID. But generally, what's kind of ironic is that our food systems are set up in a way that every year we are successfully able to feed 70 billion animals, but for some reason, 957 million people worldwide still do not have enough to eat. So that definitely poses the question as to why is that? And as businesses, why do we have enough food to feed to animals, but only a portion of the population is able to consume it, and we're leaving out a lot of people as far as who's able to eat and have food on their plates. And going into the broken supply chains, just one step further, I wanted to look at one example, and this was looking at soy. So soy is super popular because we use it either in tofu. I'm sure some of you have tried soy milk, but unfortunately, 77% of the world's soy is used for just animal feed. So you can see only 19% of that is used directly for food consumption. And so this is just one example, but it does show how our food systems might be a little broken, and we need to reevaluate them and look at how we are distributing all of our food. And then the next question I'd like to explore is there enough land to go around? And so let's take a step back and look at our Earth. Let's say the first circle on the left side of the screen, we have 71% ocean and 29% land. And in that 29% of land, only 20% is habitable land, because the other is it's either desert or covered in ice caps. And of that 20% of land that we can use and live on, 50% of that is used for agriculture. And then this gets more interesting, is the 50% of that agriculture, 77%, so more than 3/4, is used just for livestock, meat, and dairy. And this is where the skew is that 77% of livestock, meat, and dairy is only supplying 18% of the global calorie supply, but it's still taking up so much of the land. Or another way to think about it is protein. I know we all are concerned about protein. I was very concerned about protein when I used to eat lots of meat before going plant-based. But there are many ways that we can get our protein, whether it's from tofu, lentils, or alternative meats. But even the 77% of the meat that is used, it's only providing 37% of the global protein supply. So still less than half. And then there's the issue of deforestation, because as our population grows, we do need more land, and deforestation is taking place because of food systems, and that's at a rate of about 60 to 80%. And you can see here, this is from our world data. You can access their charts online, but I took a screenshot from them, and it's a heat map. So the areas that are darker in color and dark red, that's where the most deforestation is taking place. And you can see like in South America, where the Amazon rainforest is, that tends to be a very popular area just because there's so much fertile soil that's underneath the Amazon rainforest that's been building up for thousands of years. There could be a potential solution here if plant-based protein uses 96% less land than beef. We might not have to be using all of our land solely for raising animals, or perhaps we can be more efficient in how we decide to split up that land use. Okay, so next I want to talk about how can businesses even calculate their carbon footprint. I know so many businesses in the United States are starting to calculate their carbon footprint or trying to project it. And a lot of the studies that I've been reading, they do take place either in the United States or Europe, but I've also seen a handful that are in Singapore and also in Asia. So life cycle assessment seems to become more popular as the years are going on. And pretty much it is a method for assessing the environmental impacts of a product or a process. And so whether you are providing farm supplies, or you're a farmer, maybe you're a food processor or manufacturer, or you're part of the distribution, maybe you're cooking at home or you're disposing of food in waste, every stage of this life cycle where this assessment is able to take a number and attribute every stage and say, what is that carbon footprint for that specific stage in the supply chain? And so it helps us to understand the carbon emissions in each stage, and it helps us identify the problem areas that are the most resource intensive and begin forming those business improvements. So I think a good way that we've been saying it here is, once you have insights, then you can actually do something. But if you don't have any information, you're kind of walking in the dark and you don't know where you should be improving your businesses. And so another study that I had looked at was this was a study that looked at food systems resulting in 35% of global greenhouse gas emissions, which is larger than what the Environmental Protection Agency reported at 25%. So this is showing that it's much larger when we actually look at the post-retail. So post-retail, at the very top, you can see it's in the light orange. So post-retail is pretty much once that gets to the consumers, that involves their food preparation, such as refrigeration. It takes energy to use your refrigerator because your refrigerator is plugged in to the wall, most likely. And that is using up potentially fossil fuels, maybe even coal, that are connected to the electrical grid. So everything that we might not consider all uses carbon and uses emissions. And so that's the waste part. But if we go back one step into the supply chain, in purple, you can see that retail, packaging, transportation, and food processing, those all take up a portion of the carbon emissions as well, because each of those stages, they do need to refrigerate, maybe cook food, package it, transport, which, gas is involved in that footprint. And then what's surprising though, is outside of the supply chain and the consumer's post-retail use is the agriculture production at the bottom in green and the land use. Those combined contribute to 71% of the food production. So while I'm not saying that, waste and supply chain is irrelevant, it's very relevant because we all work together, but it's important to look at the production stage and the land use and who we're sourcing our supplies from and what practices we are either enabling and what practices we maybe should have discussions with businesses who we're sourcing from if we don't know what those look like. And so this was a full life cycle assessment of the greenhouse gas emissions by protein type. So on the x-axis, you can see that is all different types of protein types. And so you'll see lamb, beef, cheese, pork, turkey, chicken, tuna. And then as you continue on towards the right side of the screen, it goes into the plant-based options where you have foods like peanut butter and nuts, yogurt, even broccoli and tofu and lentils is included. But what's interesting is that you can definitely see the big disparity is that the emissions, so the amount of carbon dioxide that is emitted for lamb, beef, and cheese, for example, those are much higher than if you were to look at the right side of the graph where the arrow is pointing, as opposed to the plant-based one. So the emissions are very clear that this is just in the production side. And if you're just looking at producing these items, you can understand roughly that this is a ballpark that you will likely play in. So it's a good opportunity for plant-based companies that want to get involved and who want to inherently just be less carbon intensive and resource intensive by simply choosing more environmentally friendly food products. And maybe everyone's already heard this, but just in case anyone hasn't, I still wanted to touch upon why is animal protein so high in carbon emissions anyhow? Well, we can look at a cow just for an example, but the cow is a ruminant animal. And basically what that means is they have 4 stomachs, and it takes a lot of digestion and fermentation to get the grass out of their system. And so the cow burps, and it also farts a lot, and mainly burps. And that releases methane. And methane is a gas that also contributes to the warming of the planet, but it contributes at a rate that's 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide. And so what that means is that carbon dioxide is already warming the planet, but methane does it at 25 times the rate higher. And so that's part of the reason and part of the story as to why animal-based products tend to be higher in emissions is because not only do you have to feed them, but that food that would potentially be going to humans or for other products is going to animals. And then you also have to give them more water. And we also need to use land that really doesn't have much purpose than for the animal to walk on and to eat. And that area has a lot of gases, and there's also potential runoff from the feces. It runs off into streams. So there's a lot that goes on on animal-based farms that does result in a higher emission number. And so life cycle assessments are growing in popularity. If you look on Impossible Meat's website, you'll find their life cycle assessment there. I know in the previous presentation, Beyond Meat was mentioned. They've also done a life cycle assessment that you can find online. But really the life cycle assessment, they try to look at a few things. So I've talked about carbon, that's one, and that's right here, the global warming potential. So that's one area, but they also talk about the land occupation, water consumption. They may talk about something called the eutrophication potential, and I won't go into that, but that's about nutrients going into the water and reducing the oxygen and not allowing animals to thrive in water. But for the focus of this slide, let's focus on the global warming potential. So when we look at the Impossible Burger, we are looking at how much carbon dioxide does the Impossible Burger emit as far as emissions compared to a beef burger. And when you look at it by weight, so this is just for a kilogram of carbon dioxide by a kilogram of Impossible meat. And so the Impossible plant-based burger emits 3.5 kilograms of carbon dioxide by weight. And when you have that equally related to the beef burger, it came out to 30.6 kilograms of carbon dioxide. So that's a lot more in emissions. And so you can actually see the difference is that there's an 89% improvement simply by either producing a plant-based burger or even consuming for that day, whether you decide to do your green Mondays or meatless Mondays. And then this was another one that I actually did using a software that my professor had taught me how to use. It's called OpenLCA. And this, I looked at the global warming potential of 2 different protein types. So one was beef, just to see where does it range and against the plant-based burger. And well, you can see that the beef again is much higher than the plant-based burger. And the way I did it is I had to look at different ingredients on the back of the Ozo plant-based burger, and I had to put those into the database, and basically that gives you a number, and that's from all previous studies that were taking place, and they do an average of those studies. And looking at the plant-based alternative protein market, at least in the United States, it is growing quite substantially. Beyond Meat is very popular, not only here in the States, but internationally. Corn is common as well internationally. Amy's Kitchen, I was thankful to have the chance to work for them this past summer, where I helped them with some carbon accounting as well as doing sustainability work with them. Morningstar Farms, they're also quite popular here. I'm not too sure if any of these sound familiar to you, but Impossible, Gardein, and Tofurkey are just a handful of other brands that are pretty much seen as some of the leaders here. And what's interesting is that 80% of the top meat producers are now making vegan food either in-house or through alliances. So I just picked out 3 of the top meat producers here. And this is, well, not just in the States, but globally. So JBS, they recently purchased Vivera, which is a plant-based meat company, for $410 million. Tyson is developing their own plant-based brand in-house. And Hormel recently had a partnership with the Better Meat Co. So as you can see, even the primary animal-based companies, they're seeing that it's not just a temporary trend, because they don't want to miss out on the market opportunities. So they're certainly trying to make sure that they are getting in and that they're able to retain customers, because as we also saw previously, it's not just people who are preferring vegan or eating vegan. It's people who may want to try to do plant-based for a day. And so there's a market opportunity here that these larger companies are trying to capitalize on, which is, you know, as a business, it's probably the smart thing to do. But I think, you know, there's pros and cons to both of that, but I won't go into that right now. And looking at the plant-based, looking at the market value of the plant-based meat market worldwide, it has been growing each year at a rate of 15% annually. So by 2026, we are looking at a $30 billion industry. So it's certainly a great time to get in if anyone is thinking about it. And what's interesting is that there's more innovations that are taking place. So aside from the Impossible and Beyond Meat companies that are very well established and the market leaders as far as branding and maintaining their market space, there's unique companies that I've been coming across, specifically using fungi and mushrooms. And Nature's Find is one of them that's, they're in the United States, but they found a really interesting, it's a microbe in the hot springs of the Yellowstone National Park, and it has the ability to replicate without any disruption of nature. So what's unique is a fungi has the ability to, it doesn't need to necessarily be in the ground, and you can have it in a lab, or you can have it You basically put it on a tray, you feed it water, and it replicates exponentially. So it's very interesting to see what scientists are finding and how they're also able to extract protein and make it nutritious. And then algae is another one that I've been seeing. And Triton Algae is one company that I had came across, and they're creating a plant-based tuna using algae. And pretty much what they're using, algae is rich in iron, and it also is able to provide a meaty texture, and it only takes 2 weeks to grow into what it needs to be, which is a lot shorter than having to wait 10 months to a year for an animal to reach full maturity. So there's certainly lots of pros in using unique ingredients like fungi or algae. And this was research that I found this was through a Mintel report. This was just for the US, but I did see that there was a similarity in the prior presentation with health being up there. But this report found that the reasons why consumers are eating less animal protein is because there's simply more plant-based options. I think when people are curious and if it's appetizing and tasty, and if there's some health benefits, people are willing to try. But then the second biggest reason was health. And I know that was the reason why I started to try plant-based options. And so I can see that it's a big trend right now. And then the third reason was for price. Sometimes plant-based options might be more affordable than sometimes your meat-based options, especially if you're looking for a quality meat cut and not those that are raised in the CAFOs, where sometimes the meat is not very healthy and it might be pumped with sodium. And then the fourth most popular reason was the environment. And millennials are the largest age group that are consuming plant-based protein today. And they make up, in the US, 25% of the population. So it's a great group to target, especially because they care very much about the environment and the health as part of their values. And to conclude my presentation, I do want to share some resources that might help you understand your carbon footprint and your business. One is the Environmental Protection Agency, and you can go to www.epa.gov. It's a great resource to use as far as understanding what greenhouse gas emissions are. And even when you actually start to get numbers, you can start to understand, well, what is that in relation to maybe cars? So it's a great place to start your research. The Food Carbon Emissions Calculator is a great location as well, because if you don't have the time or you don't have the resources to do a full life cycle assessment, this website, www.foodemissions.com, will give you rough estimates of how much carbon certain food emits. You can also conduct your own LCA using OpenLCA, which is free, or the SEMA Pro software. You might need to take some time to learn how to operate those, but they are free to download onto your computer. At least they're free for everyone in the US. I'm hoping they're free internationally. And then second to last is to hire an external third party to perform an LCA for you. There are many consulting agencies out there and many environmental groups that do specialize in this type of reporting. And then lastly, you can start to collaborate with your suppliers and buyers so that you can understand where they're purchasing, what their methods are like, and maybe they even have information that can help fill in those gaps for you. And thank you all for taking the time to listen today. And if you do feel like reaching out, you're welcome to contact me through my university email. It's jcruz@uoregon.edu.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Justine, for your, splendid presentation for your today. And we will be moving forward with our questions. We have been receiving a number of questions at the Q&A box here. So we'll be starting with Mr. Hiroto's question. There is a person from UK, his name is Brian Edwards. He asks, Consumers, when questioned about their opinion of plant-based products, responded that the products are too overpriced and overprocessed. In your opinion, should the industry or manufacturers invest in reducing costs as well as improving taste and texture attributes? Mr. Hirto, that question is for you actually.
Okay, so unfortunately, the connection was a little bit unstable. So your question was about from Brian Edwardson, is it?
Yes, Brian Edwards.
Okay. All right. So the question was about the industry manufacturer should invest in reducing costs as well as improving the texture. Okay, I'd like to share my thought with you. So as for the reducing costs, yes, if we need to go to mass market, it surely need to reduce the cost, I guess. And as you may know, the Beyond Meat and Impossible Burger, and as well as other international brands started to cut the cost with the volume production. So this will happen not only like US but also other countries like here in Japan. And I think I can share with you one of my example case. So can you see the photo? Yes. Yeah, so this is the information that I got from IKEA, Japan. And as you can see, the plant-based bowl in the left side and the right side is meat, a conventional meat bowl. And the price, as you can see, the plant-based bowl is 100 yen cheaper than the meat bowl. And I asked them, the person in charge, what the reaction. And then they say that 30 to 40% of the normal customer are choosing the plant-based bowl. And I think it's not only because of the price, but I think the price is really important for people to choose at the first time. So I think, yeah, so the investing in the reducing the price is one of the important factor so far. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I hope Mr. Brian, Mr. Hiroto's answer is quite clear already for that question. And we will move forward with our next question from Mr. Fadi. He asks, what is the possibility of transferring this experience to the Arab countries to develop traditional foods? That's the question is for Mr. Hiroto.
Oh, actually, unfortunately, sorry, my bad English. I cannot really understand the meaning of that question. So could you elaborate the meaning of the
Yeah, Mr. Fadi, if you could elaborate about this question, it would be great so that Mr. Hiroto knows what you're asking about.
Yes.
And maybe we can move forward with another question.
Yeah, please.
Mr. Jit Kyang Kok, he asks, is in markets where the local diet is mixed with meat and plant-based alternatives, how does one find ways to find plant or flexitarian alternatives?
Where? Is it also a question for me?
Yeah, the question is.
So I tried to find the question, but suddenly missed, and then I cannot find the one. So where is that? So
Okay,
could you repeat the question? Yeah, if it's possible.
Once again.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You cannot find the one.
I think it has disappeared from this chat box. Never mind, we will move forward with another question here. He asked a lot of questions. Would you be able to share your personal strategies to make own home grocery list to a more sustainable plant-based alternatives? You can see in your Q&A box over there. The questions are over there. Can you see it?
I cannot see.
How about now?
Q&A So
Yeah.
yes. Oh,
Oh, I was
it's a
gonna
question for
help
you.
you.
Okay.
No,
Yeah,
it's for you.
okay. No.
Can you repeat the question that you were
I
on?
have,
Maybe I can help.
sure. Would you be able to share your personal strategies to make own home grocery list to a more sustainable plant-based alternatives?
I
This is
see
a
it.
follow-up question. Yeah, how does one find these alternatives in this commercial scale to make one's business much more sustainable?
Yep, and I can answer that. So let's see. I'm going to take it apart. So would you, where did it go? I'm trying to follow it, but there's more questions and it disappeared. But I think it was, how can you make is it your business or yourself more sustainable?
Yeah, right. Home grocery list to a more sustainable plant-based alternatives, and how this commercial scale to make one business much more sustainable.
So it's definitely a loaded question, but to start, you really want to understand where is the biggest area of your environmental impact. So you have to ask yourself, is that my electricity bill? Is it my energy use? Is it in my products? Is it the traveling? There's a lot that goes into it. So you have to first ask yourself, what is the biggest area? And is that biggest area the one that I can fix first? Sometimes there are a lot of costs that go behind that. So you can't fix it right away, and that's okay. Trying to look at some of the easier options to be more sustainable. So maybe it's making small changes, such as looking at your waste. And waste is often a very easy way to be more sustainable without flipping your business upside down, right? Looking at how can you divert all of your food waste, and food waste turns into organic matter, and organic matter is needed for soils to thrive. So something so simple as having a place for food waste. That's very cheap and an easy way to do it. It's a start. So just ask yourself what can you as a business afford or as a person afford, and then start to make those small changes before taking on the big ones.
Okay, I hope the question is answered, and we will move forward with another question here from Mr. Huang Kun Kwong. This is for Ms. Cruz about GHG produced by agricultural sector, specifically cow. I have come across one idea stating that cow is recycling the GHG available in the environment instead of adding new gases. So may I ask, what is your opinion on this?
Yes, of course. So I don't have the chance to look at the video and get back to you, but I can definitely do that after the call. But for now, what I will say is, from the knowledge that I have gained, is that the only time cows can potentially help with the process is if they are grazing naturally, not in tightly confined CAFOs. And basically it's farms where like the factory farming, and 80% of our meat supply globally comes from the meat that is very tightly packed in a farm. So it's really hard to know if your meat is coming from one of the farms that are being better with the animals and allowing them to graze. But even the cow, like the benefits of the cow, sure, they're chewing on the grass and it helps to regenerate and helps to regrow that piece of the soil. But one thing in my soil science class that we're learning is that the weight of the cows and the walking compacts the soil, which doesn't benefit the carbon potential that it can store. So even though there might be some positive claims about, the cows are great. I think they're awesome animals, but they're not necessarily great at recycling greenhouse gas because they emit a lot more than they could ever recycle.
Okay. We have a question here. Actually, it's a general question here, I guess, from Mr. Kyril. He asks, how protein is in plant-based burger versus beef? I guess he's asking questions like how the protein is actually works in plant-based burger or beef, and how it is being manufactured maybe. So you guys can share your opinion on this.
Would you like me to go? Mr. Hirota, would you like to try?
Yeah, could you explain, could you answer the question first? And yeah, if I could, then I can follow up there.
So I think he's asking, how is protein in a plant-based burger versus beef? So protein is found everywhere. It's even found in vegetables. But basically protein in a plant-based burger, you can extract it from, let's say, black beans. You can extract it from soy, and that has a high protein content. You can also take it from gluten. Gluten is a form of wheat, but it's a high concentrate and it has a lot of protein as well. And so it's looking at the vegetables and trying to take out the ones that are higher in protein, like soy, because soybeans have a lot of protein, or even lentils, and cooking them in a way and binding them to make a patty. And as compared to, what did you say, a beef burger? So I think the protein is that you're trying to get them as equal. The protein in the plant burger, you will digest faster, but you'll still get the benefits without the cholesterol. That's why I don't have cholesterol, well, high cholesterol anymore, thankfully. The beef one, if you don't have to worry about cholesterol, you probably don't need to worry too much about that, but you can still get the protein and the cholesterol may not bother your health. Oh, I think
you're on mute.
Sorry, I think I had some internet connection problem here, but I'm back now. We continue with a few questions more. I guess there is one person he has about this food regulations in this plant-based plant products and alternative products. So could you please explain about this food regulation regarding this, particularly about this plant-based food?
Okay, so regulation of the plant-based.
So,
okay, so regulation of the plant-based food, is it the question? Okay, so I try to answer my question first, and if something missed, so please just add your comments after me. Okay, so it's really depends on country, especially Japan is really different from other countries. So sometimes we, in a plant-based, Japanese government say, so even the product has a animal ingredients like, egg and other meat ingredients. So if, mostly consists of the plant, so yeah, we can say the plant-based, but I guess it's completely different from other countries. So my understanding, based on my understanding, that basically the meaning of the plant-based is similar to the vegan. So all plant, 100 plant derived ingredients product. And I think I can share the slide. So that's the moment. So actually yesterday I had a seminar about this topic in Japan. So I can share my understanding. Yes, so the plant-based versus vegan. Yeah, plant-based, a diet is, the no meat, no seafood, and no egg and dairy. Yes, it completely, basically there are no, animal ingredients. And then, yes, so like yes, similar to the vegan meaning. So this is my understanding. But yeah, so if Justine-san had any comments on this, so I would like you to add.
Yes. So one comment I would like to add is that plant-based tends to be seen as vegan for the most part. But what's interesting is that food manufacturing companies that have plant-based on their packaging, sometimes it can have eggs or butter or animal-based products. It doesn't have to be purely 100% vegan. So while on a very casual level, plant-based and vegan tend to mean the same thing, when you actually look in America, you're able to put butter, egg, or cheese and still call it a plant-based. So that starts to become confusing for some consumers. And so myself, I don't eat dairy or cheese, so I have to look at the back of everything and read every ingredient, because plant-based doesn't always mean that it's free of animal byproduct.
Thank you for the very clear answer for both of you. And I think Adeline, she asked about one question about this plant-based. What is for you the categories of plant-based products which are the most promising to growth in Japan? This is for Mr. Hiroto.
Okay, so the promising category in the Japanese plant-based market, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, I was thinking of the answer, and so I think the vegan cheese, plant-based cheese, is one of that. Maybe in the Europe, so already there are tons of vegan cheese products at the moment, but fortunately and unfortunately, there are not few vegan cheese brands here in Japan. Mostly we are focusing on, when we think of the vegan alternative protein, we may think of that alternative meat first before other category. So not so many vegan cheese, and the quality is not very good enough here in Japan. And compared to meat, dairy section is more easy to try, even for non-vegan people, ordinary people. For example, when we go to supermarket store, we can find a lot of alternative milk sectors, like soy milk, almond milk, and other types of milk. So it's really easy to try for Japanese as well. So that's why I think vegan cheese is one of choice.
Vegan cheese is one of the potential plant-based food over there. Right, great. So for the last question of the day, this is from Miss Christine, I guess. Do plant-based burger will have to use a lot of flavor and food additives to masking the taste? So how is that healthy concern is about? So Ms. Justine, maybe you can share your opinion on this, maybe?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because as we try to eat healthier, we try to eat in a more natural way, right? And sometimes these plant-based meats, you try and look at how they made it, and you said, I don't know what that is. What are they using to bind the protein together? And sometimes you can read the ingredients. And the rule that I follow for myself is I don't treat it as something I have every single day, just because I don't think there's enough research, and I wouldn't feel comfortable eating that every day. Do you feel comfortable eating, a frozen burrito or frozen food every single day? Probably not, if you are concerned about health. But at least from my experience, when you do speak with some of these food manufacturers, there are some who are using a lot of organic ingredients and plant-based ingredients, which plays a big role in making it healthier. And so when you say health, I think you have to ask yourself, what does it mean to you to be healthier? To you, does that mean you don't want to have ingredients in your body that you don't know how to read, and that's fine. Or to you, does health mean you don't want to have things high in fat? And so for me, that means I don't eat a lot of animal protein because it's usually very high in fat and my body just can't break it down. And other times, I think the other side of that is, so again, is it healthy? If you are getting your meat from a manufacturer that's not treating the animal in the proper way and they're feeding it a diet that's not, you may never know what goes into the diet of those animals, and you may not know how much sodium after it's processed, after after it's killed, and how much sodium goes into the animal. So even though it may look like it's a piece of chicken, you don't know what's behind it that took all the process that went into it to get there. So it's hard to compare, but at least with the plant-based ones, you know exactly what's in it, and it's on the label. The chicken, it'll say chicken or beef, but you don't know what was fed to it and how it was treated. And so that can have negative impacts on your health. But I think it depends on what you're looking for in a healthy option.
Yes, I mean, there are a lot of plant-based foods are available in the market now. So it depends on the people, what they are actually choosing to eat and what kind of healthy meal they wanted each day. Yes. Okay, how about Mr. Hiratos, do you like to share any opinion on this, like regarding this health concern on plant-based food?
Okay, so my answer is really simple and opinion. So it really depends on people. So what is healthy for you is the answer. And recently, because we are preparing for our branch opening, and then we have a lot of opportunity to discuss with other countries, the business partner. For example, I had a meeting with EU, and I had a meeting with mainland China, and also domestic here in Japan. And when we talk about the healthy, the aspect of the plant-based food products, it really depends on the country. For example, this is not the answer, but I got a comment from the EU, the company. So they say they're more caring about protein, in the package of the plant-based meat. Maybe you can see the Beyond Meat and the Impossible Burger. Yeah. So it's there, emphasizing the protein on the package. But in case of China, so this morning I heard that, consumer, of course, the protein is very important, but also caring about the low calorie. And I think the same things happen in Japan as well. Japanese consumer, always caring about the low calorie or high calorie. And in case of Japan, also caring about high fiber is also very important. So it really depends on case and the country. So this is my answer. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I guess this is our last question of the day from Mr. Wei Kantong. He asked to both our speakers actually on the plant-based food products economic competition, because there are other food companies like Eat Just, which the founders made meat alternative from cultured animal cells. Will that affect the economy of plant-based food products since it might possibly clashes with it?
I can go first, and then Hiroto, you can go after. So I think it's a unique, it's definitely a unique market. I haven't studied it very well, but I do not think it will clash, because I feel like the audience who tends to go for, who's looking for a plant-based option tends to be for health reasons. And they're open to trying plant-based, whereas someone who is trying animal meat made from a cell in a lab, they may feel very weird about that, and they would prefer to just go get it from a farm rather than the animal cultured cells. But I don't have strong opinions on it, and I can't say much because I haven't done a comparison on those two markets, but I don't think they would clash as much as you would think.
So I guess that's all from today. I guess that's all the questions out from the audience. We have wrapped up the question Q&A session today. So it looks like we are almost done. So before we wrap up this series today. Mr. Hiroto and Ms. Justin, do you have anything else that you'd like to add up to this audience? Anything about plant-based foods and this competitive market growth?
I just posted a quick, so just because someone asked about the health, that's a research that was done by Harvard. I think it's a good research to read into and just see, but they are claiming that using plant-based proteins does lower the risk for heart disease, which, you know, in my case was the issue I wanted to stay away from. So that article did a study, I think over some years. So it could be interesting for you to see what the results were.
Mr. Hiroto?
Okay, so last comment from me. Yes, yeah, thank you so much for having me today. And yeah, because we are, you know, focusing on the Japan market and, you know, importing to Japan, also exporting, you know, the Japanese product. And this is really, you know, early, you know, industry, you know, plant-based here in Japan. But we see, you know, there are a lot of potentials, you know, so many perspectives. So yeah, if someone, you know, interested in this topic, so I'd like you to, you know, come to our website and to start to discuss further.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, and great once again for our good speakers today for the excellent presentation about this plant-based food products and the growing market. We appreciate your being here today. And for the audience, thanks again for joining us, and we will see you in our next series regarding growth of halal food and beverages, which will be held on 28 October 2021, same time, 3 p.m. GMT Malaysia. Link will be placed in the chat box for registration. So register now. Thank you once again. Stay tuned with our Food Trends Symposium series. Have a great day and stay safe. So bye. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.